Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. In this tutorial, we will see what is version control system, and then as a DevOps engineer, why we need to learn this version control system and tools, and we need to what are the some real-time use cases where we can use this version control system. Then we need to see types of version control tools which are available in our market. So that is how we can split up whole session today. So when I can say version control, there are two parts. One is called client, another one is a server. Okay. So always the client we need to install in our local machine, which is in Windows or Linux server. The server will be sitting somewhere. As a user, you need to connect to the remote server from your client, then take the code from remote server to your local, then you can develop it and you can put back to the remote server. So that is how the high level flow will be there. So in between, we need to know what are the commands we need to work with, how the flow will be there. Okay, so which and all the commands we need to work on it. Let's discuss on them. Okay, so we need to understand first what is mean by version control system. As soon as we say version control system, what are the different components of available in this, and what are the tools we use ideally. So in the market, so there are popular tool is available which is called Git. Most of the organizations or companies, they are using Git version control system only. So we will try to learn what is a Git and how to use that Git, what is the workflow of the Git, and then in that Git, in according to the modern approach or agile methodology, what kind of strategies we are going to apply, and how will you tell developer on what is the policy or what is the workflow they need to follow, so that there should be some parallel development, there should be a permissions, there should be some workflows. So that's what we will try to focus and we need to learn. Okay, so for this, we don't care whether the developer is using Java, C, C++, Python, .NET, Node.js, whatever the programming language. They are going to write the code or they are going to develop the code. We just helping them to how to manage this code in files in terms of version control system, how they are going to store that code, how they are going to put their code back into that version control system. So these kind of assistance we need to provide to the development team. So before going to set up all these policies or strategy, you should basically understanding what is version controlling and how to use it, why it is important, and then why we need to learn it. Okay, so these are the points we need to focus on it. So as I told, there are real-time scenarios, use cases are there. Why as a DevOps engineer we need to learn this version control system. Okay, so before going to that, first we need to use why this version control system. Okay, say example, if we have a one project, so there are 10 developers are working. Example, we can put that initial code into the Google Drive. Okay, so we can provide the permission to all the 10 developers. Okay, if one developer trying to connect to that Google Drive, he can download it, he can modify the changes, he can put back to the Google Drive. Again, second developer trying to download, and then he can modify the changes, he can put back to the Google Drive. Like this, they will try to work on it. But sometimes when I say I can download that file, 1 hour back, so I did some changes. Okay, but I did not put those changes back into the Google Drive. So in between, someone done the changes. If I can done the changes, so whatever the second developer put back the changes, those changes are not available in my local file. So and apart from that, If someone deleted that file, okay, so we cannot able to know actually who is deleted, what line is deleted. Okay, so those tracking is not available. Example, if someone modified, at what time he modified, what time he deleted, for deleting modifications, we cannot come to know the notifications and all. Okay, so these are the some drawbacks are there. We cannot do that some parallel development with the sync all the changes. The second thing is there is no backup or strategies available, there is no notifications are available, and we cannot track who deleted the code, who commit the code, and who modify the code, at what time, at what date he can delete, he commit. Okay, so these are the some drawbacks. So that is the reason we need version control system where we can able to track the changes, we can enable the policies, and we can control the code changes, who need to access, who cannot access, all those controls we can able to do. And even if I can try to commit the changes, whatever the code is available in the remote repository, so the latest sync should be available in the working copy also. If there is no sync, the latest changes are not available in our working copy, the push or the changes, if you want to try to put back to the remote server, it should not be allowed. It's trying to say that you should have to update the working copy. So this workflow we will try to learn when we are working with the Git in the real time. I will show you. Okay, so that is where using version control system we can track the changes, we can come to know who deleted, who modified, at what time, at what date, and even if someone done the changes, we can get the notifications as well. There is a policies are available. No, all the people cannot able to access the code. We can control the access, who need to access this particular repository, who cannot access this particular repository, and even we can allow the parallel development also. So that is where the version control system is needed. Okay, and when we can come to that use cases, sorry, there is a one use case is you need to help for the development team and other teams for their development activities to manage their code and other stuff. Example, if the developer trying to modify the code, sometimes they don't know how to commit the code, how to modify, what is the workflow they need to follow, and what commands they are going to use. Sometimes they will get that some conflicts, some issues. That time they will come to us. So that is where you need to know actually. Otherwise, you cannot help to them. Not only the development team, so sometimes production teams comes, sometimes QA team comes, sometimes testing team comes, because sometimes they will refer the some test cases, sometimes production team refer that documents or mobs method of procedure. Suppose they need to take that particular document from that Git repository. If the production team will face some issues, again they will send or they will ping us actually. So that is where whenever the teams like dev team, QA team, other production team, staging team, if they have any concern in terms of Git or in terms of version control system, so if they need to clone it, if they need to do the some changes, in all the scenarios we will be ready to help to them actually. So that is where the first use case is you need to help for the development teams and other teams to do their development activities. Okay, so that is the first use case. And the second use case is, as a DevOps engineer, you will write some automation files or automation scripts. Like when you are working with Jenkins or Ansible, Docker, Terraform, Kubernetes, and other tools, for if you work with that Docker, you will write or develop some Docker file. So that is the file you are going to develop it, which is called syntax. And you will work for Jenkins, you will write Jenkins file. For Ansible and Kubernetes, you will write for YAML files. For Terraform, you will write for the Terraform files. Okay, so that means you are going to develop Docker file, Jenkins file, YAML file, Terraform file. So all these files you will write for some syntax to do some automations. Okay, so you will also be doing and day-to-day activities, some kinds of development for automating the tasks and deploying the task by using ML files and configuring the servers by using ML files for Ansible playbooks. So that is where in DevOps, ideally, minimum you should be saying 50% of development or 50% of operation work. Okay, so that is so what is that? What exactly 50%? What exactly 50% of operation, 50% of development is? We are going to developing. So you are developing like YAML file, Jenkins file, Docker file, Terraform files. So that is where are you going to store all these files actually? Okay, so you need to store these files in the version control tools or system, right? So that is when you should be also using the version control system for your work. At the same time, you should be also help to the other teams. So that is where first you should have to know end-to-end version control system workflows and what is the concepts of available in that version control system, and what are the commands we are using our day to day, what are the issues we are facing, how to use version control system end to end. All these concepts you should have to aware of this before going to help to the developer. Okay, so these are the two use cases. One is for helping the developers, second use case for commit your development files actually. Okay, so this is how we need to, that is where we need to learn this version control system. And the second thing is types of version control tools. What are the types of version control system? So there are different types are there. The first thing is distributed version control system. So distributed version control system example is Git, GitHub, GitLab, Bitbucket, Azure DevOps, Mercurial. So all these tools comes under the distributed version control system. And when I say distributed version control system means, so example is if you could take Git. So this was supported and designed for the distributed model, and this also designed for two parts, that is client and server model. So as I told initially, so in the client and server model, in order to support the Git will be maintained that local repository in your local PC or Linux server with the source code. Here there is a remote repository available where all the repositories will be maintained with the source code actually. Okay, we'll see uh, how it should work actually. We'll see it actually. So the second thing is centralized version control system, where is example CVS concurrent version control system, subversion and Fairforce. And the third one is it's a local version control system, example is RCS, local control system actually, remote. Okay, so now say when we can come to that local version control system, we have a local server. Okay, on the same local server we have a source code repository. So we will be developed there, and we can create that various versions for the project. Then we can store the local server itself. So this is called local version control system. Okay, so it is very old one, no longer we used it, it was outdated, hence it is not there in the market. So all are moved to the centralized version control system actually. So you need to understand here high level, local version control system means only one server is available. From that server only we are maintaining the repository, we can do the development and we can commit the changes and we can maintain all the stuff in the only single server. So that is called local version control system. So nowadays no one is using this local version control system. Then coming to that centralized version control system, example where we can see for CVS, SVN and Perforce. So these centralized version control system designed and built for the client server model, where there is a centralized server is available. Then we have to install the SVN client in our PC or any Linux server. So client will connect to that central server and it will fetch the code. Then we need to develop the code in our local SVN client server. Again we can commit the changes back to the central server, which is called SVN server example. The assumption here is that the client can be always connected with the server when we need to perform any operations. Example, if you want to fetch the code, if you want to put back the changes to that centralized version control system, so in that cases client and server should be always in the online when we need to perform all these operations actually. So that is about centralized version control system. Whereas distributed version control system, as I told, there is a remote server, there is a client we need to also install for the Git also. So that all the users will connect to that Git remote server from their client and does the clone, or they can take the required repository from remote repository to local repository, and then each user will have their own local repository. After that they can do the develop the code, and then they can commit the changes to the local repository itself. Then finally they will put back the changes to the remote repository. So to do all these operations, what are the commands we need to use? Okay, so which command will be supported to put the code from local repository to remote repository? What is the syntax? Those and all we need to learn it actually. Whenever there is a requirement for take the code or update the code from remote repository to local repository, or push or put the changes from local repository to remote repository, we need the network connection, okay, to perform these operations. Otherwise, most of the time, I can say 80% of the time or 80% of the work we will perform with your local repository only at that time. So no network connection is needed. So that is how the distributed version control system should be work. So this is how high level differences actually. So distributed and centralized version control system. So there are some pros and cons are there. So once we will discuss this Git or GitHub, we will see it actually how what differences are there between distributed and centralized version control system. We will focus on that actually. Okay, so this is you need to aware of this end to end or high level. What is the distributed version control system? How it will work? What is the centralized version control system? How it work? What is the local version control system? How it work? You need to get the high level differences first. So in the market, in the industry, so Git is a very popular. It is a open source also. So in the next class, we will try to learn what is a Git, how the Git workflow, what are the different commands we can use it, what are the workflow of the Git, what are the policies, what is the repository, what is the branches, and after that, what is the Git policies all available. We will discuss all those concepts actually. First, I can list out the concepts in the agenda. So after that, we can split those concepts and we can work on it one by one. So this is how the version control tools and why we need to learn and types of version control systems. Okay, so could you please go through it, and don't forget, could you please subscribe my channel? If you have any doubt, could you please comment in my channel? So thanks for watching.